YouTube, it's Tone back with another one for you. Now, this one here is called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. And this is like right in the middle of this particular book. I'm going to do a few videos on it, but I'm going to focus on different sections and shit like that. So you can get a good understanding of how the monetary system is set up and the way that it runs. Because I think it's crucial to understand, a few different aspects, but we'll start here. So the Federal Reserve's income each year is well over $1 trillion. Congress holds them exempt from paying taxes on their illegally obtained income. They pay only real estate taxes. In order to perpetuate this ongoing fraud on the American public, it is imperative that the Fed's financial activities never be subject to public scrutiny. And so, in its 86-year history, the Fed has never been audited by Congress or by any other government agency and never will be. Now, how come they never will be, you probably ask, is because they're really just a private business. And they're doing business just like anybody else, but part of their stipulation is to let them do whatever the fuck they want. That was all part of the deals that they made with the Corporation of the United States in Washington. So neither presidents, congressmen, nor secretaries of the Treasury direct the Federal Reserve in the matters of money. The Federal Reserve directs them. So none dare call it a conspiracy. Apparently that's a book there. So in the United States, we have in effect two governments. We have the duly constituted government, and we have an independent, uncontrolled, and uncoordinated government in the Federal Reserve System, operating the money powers which are reserved to Congress by the Constitution. Congressman Wright Patman, Chairman, Housing, Banking, and Currency Committee. So those are the different sections of the law that these people work in. So by law, the 7 members of the Federal Reserve Board are appointed by the president for a term of 14 years each. In spite of the incredible length of these appointments, nevertheless, they are supposed to create the illusion to the people acting through their elected leaders have some voice in the nation's monetary policies. In practice, however, every president since the beginning of the Federal Reserve System has appointed only those men who were congenial to the financial interests of the international banking dynasties. There have been no exceptions. The Capitalist Conspiracy, a book by Edward Griffin, apparently. So, in its 60-year history, the Federal Reserve System has never been subject to a complete independent audit. and it is the only important agency that refuses to consent to an audit by the Congress's agency, the General Accounting Office, the GAO. GAO audits of the Federal Reserve will, moreover, fill the glaring gap that now exists in our information about the Fed's activities and programs. And this now stand. The only information that we get on the programs of the Fed is what the Fed itself wants us to have. Which, I mean, they have every right to keep their business private because they are a private business. You know what I mean? So I think that just a lot of people don't really understand the nature of this governmental structure and how it's all commercial. Because when you start to study the commercial laws, you'll start to understand better what it is that these people are really doing, and it'll all start to make sense. So the Fed will tell you about their money. I found that of the most informative information available on the topic of money, debt, inflation, borrowing, interest, and banking are given freely by the Federal Reserve districts. Their story of their money. What we carry in our wallets, Federal Reserve notes, would be disqualified as money even if they were notes. A note is an IOU, a promise to pay, and evidence of debt. Even the Fed itself does not refer to the Federal Reserve notes as money. Their own publications, however, often refer to FRNs as forms of money. Other possible forms of money might include credit cards, bank drafts, checks, electronic funds, transfer, pretty colored rocks. Pretty colored rocks, they put. And then obviously money orders and shit like that too. So you guys know that because we make money orders and they take them at the IRS. So none of these, however, can in any way be construed as money. And it is arguable whether they are even a legitimate promise to pay. And they're not a fucking legitimate promise to pay, because who the fuck are they even supposed to come after for the payment if anybody ever really wanted to cash that in for some type of legal tender payment? Like you wouldn't even be able to do anything. I mean, the most that you would be able to do is like probably sue the Federal Reserve, and then try to get your hands on some of their assets. But as far as getting any real money from them, I don't think that's even a possibility. So obviously the notes are a fucking lie. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, so isn't everything about it. I mean, when you look at the color of Federal Reserve notes next to Monopoly money side by side, they're the same exact color. So you already know what time it is. So legal tender. Look at the Federal Reserve note and you will find the statement. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The Fed has been careful so as not to perpetuate an outright fraud. The congressman did that for them. At least so far in what they state on their notes, they have never asserted that their currency is lawful money, for that would be a direct violation of the Constitution and the Coinage Act. Instead, they have called it legal tender. One is a noun, money equals substance, the other is a verb, tender equals action. So legal, the form of law hoisted by the courts as the interference imputation of law as a matter of construction rather than by established actual proof. Tender, an offer of money, the act by which one produces and offers to a person holding a claim or demand against him, the amount of money which he considers to admit to be due in satisfaction of claim or demand without any stipulation or condition, as used in determining whether one party may place the other party in breach of contract for failure to perform. The actual proffer of money is as distinguished from mere proposal or proposition to proffer it. Hence, mere written proposal to pay money without offer of cash is not tender. So what they're saying here is that by definition, the way that the UN's currency is set up is basically a lie, because nobody could ever actually cash that in. If they wanted to cash in on that promise to pay, well, who the fuck is supposed to pay when they go try to cash in on that promise? So there you go. Fucking illegal. So the law ignored. Was the Constitution amended? Have the laws been changed? What happened to all the money? Government would argue that no person has the right to financial transactions that are private in nature. Only criminals like drug dealers care about privacy. The argument goes, if you don't have anything to hide, then why do you care about your privacy? However, your right to privacy supersedes the government's right to know. Privacy is a constitutionally protected right, not so that the criminals will go unpunished, but because governments have historically demonstrated a propensity for using information gains against its citizens as a means of control and intimidation. The real objective of implementing an electronic cash devoid of real money is not all about the elimination of real and legitimate crime in society. It is about seizing control of every imaginable area of everyone's lives. Smart cards and neural implants, quote microchip implants, are a technologic and practical reality today. All that is really necessary to break down the widespread reluctance to implementing them is an economic collapse. It is the old game of government creating the problem, like Waco, Texas, and then providing the solution. Did you realize that we are already living in a cash void society? Cash is money, isn't it? Well, how could we possibly have a free market cashless society without any real money? The Legal Tender Act does not attempt to make paper a standard of value. We do not rest their validity upon the assertion that their emission is coinage or any regulation of the value of money. Nor do we assert that Congress may make anything which has no value money. Are silver dollars really made of silver? Not anymore. Silver is too expensive, so today's silver dollars are really a silver-looking metal. Outside, that is 75% copper, 25% nickel. The inside is 100% copper. So this is what they're telling you about your own coinage that's being produced at this point. And you know that we're the only ones that are authorized to make money, right? And this is why they're always trying to approach you in different ways to get you to sign things and engaging you in different ways like that all the time. So, did you realize that when you quote unquote tender a debt with the Federal Reserve note or bank drafted check or credit card or other forms of money as opposed to actual money, you are not in any way making a payment. You simply made a promise to pay. The Constitution and the law established that the only lawful money is gold and silver. You cannot lawfully make payment without anything but gold or silver coin, unless the party agrees in advance to some other form of equitable value barter exchange. A Federal Reserve note has no intrinsic value and is not evidence of wealth. It is evidence of debt. And unfortunately, to the one who accepts them, they are not even legitimate notes. FRNs fail the test for legitimacy for notes because there isn't a promise to pay for anything and they're not redeemable for anything. Note: an instrument containing an express and absolute promise of signer, i.e. maker, to pay for a specified person or order the bearer a definite sum of money at a specified time. A note not meeting the requirements may be an assignable but not negotiable. So a note is a specific and unconditional promise to pay. UCC 3041. Intrinsically, a dollar bill is just a piece of paper. Well, if that wasn't fucking obvious enough, you know what I'm saying? So FRNs do not make payment. What exactly happens then when you make a transaction using a FRN and acquire property or services? You have not in fact made payment, but the debt incurred for the goods is thereby discharged. The distinction is significant. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. Something of the original vitality of the debt continues to exist, which may be transferred even though the transferee takes it subject to the disability incident to the discharge. The fact that it carries something that which may be a consideration for a new promise to pay, so as to make an otherwise worthless promise a legal obligation, makes it the subject of transfer by assignment. So that's a little bit of an intricate statement there, but it is absolutely true. So about all a Federal Reserve note can legally do is wipe out one debt and replace it with itself, another debt, a note that promises to pay nothing. If anything has been paid, the payment occurs only in the mind of the parties in the idea sphere, not the real world. A bona fide note can be used in a financial transaction to discharge the debt only because it is an unconditional promise to pay by the issuer to the bearer. Is a Federal Reserve note a contract note, an unconditional promise to pay? At one time, the Federal Reserve issued bona fide contractual notes and certificates redeemable in gold and silver. Most people never saw or comprehended the contract. It went largely unread because the Federal Reserve very cunningly hid the contract on the face of the note by breaking it up into 5 separate lines on the text with a significantly different typeface for each line. That shit is funny. And placing the president's picture on the writer in the middle of it. They even used an old attorney's rules of obscuring the most important text in fine print. Over time, the terms and conditions of the contract were diluted until eventually they literally became an IOU nothing. Yo. I mean, you gotta admit, these motherfuckers are slick, bro. And that shit is fucking funny, because if they put it right in your face like that and you choose to disregard it, I mean, granted, whoever thinks to walk around with a fucking magnifying glass in your pocket to read these fucking contracts, but now that you see who these people are, you should probably get a magnifying glass, bro, before you sign anything. Because even the line can be a word and you wouldn't even know it. Imagine that. Lincoln and Kennedy assassinated. Mind you guys, I don't believe either of these motherfuckers were assassinated. I think, they all played their part in the role of trying to let you know what it was that was really going down. Could they have put their lives in risk? Probably, but I don't think that they really died like that. And so Lincoln and Kennedy assassinated. By 1964, there were no more Federal Reserve notes being issued that were redeemable for money. In fact, 50 million of the first very non-redeemable notes were shipped on November 26, 1963, the very day JFK was buried. Could there be a connection? And you see how they do these ceremonies and shit, and that definitely was a message. So President Kennedy had issued Executive Order 1111-0 on June 4th, 1963, ordering the Treasury to print United States notes. The most memorable of these notes was the $2 issue. these notes couldn't be redeemed for anything anymore. So then could Federal Reserve notes. But at least they had not indebted the people because they were issued without debt owing to the Federal Reserve Bank. Abraham Lincoln also made a similar daring move, ordering the Treasury to issue paper notes known as Lincoln Greenbacks, rather than borrow banknotes from the Bank of England. Both presidents were promptly assassinated. One of the very first executive orders issued by Lyndon B. Johnson as newly appointed dictator was for the mints to start producing silver coins and to start issuing clad coins made out of copper, nickel, and zinc, and other cheap metals. In this order, Johnson recalled of all of the non-interest-bearing script. Johnson was demonstrably, okay, well that was a word, responsible for the debauching of the U.S. currency. So, all of these dudes are just playing their part in the game right there, just to let you know what was going on, because they do have a duty to let you know what's really going on, but they'll blend it into different fucking events like that, or put it in movies and cartoons and shit like that. So, the high office of the president has been used to foment a plot to destroy America's freedoms. And before I leave this office, I must inform the citizens of this plight. John F. Kennedy at Columbia University 10 days before his assassination. So right here he was telling you that people came together with a plot to destroy America's freedom. Before he left office, that he had to inform everybody of that particular situation. Before I leave office implies that he knew he was about to be leaving office. So it is my firm belief that President Kennedy was removed by the same organization that removed Lincoln, by the same method for the same reason. If he had not issued Executive Order 1111-0 and made that statement, he most likely would have lived. All just part of the game, bro. So, institutions of blue smoke and mirrors. For the past 30 years, I have known that the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank control the entire world economy, not just the United States. Until only recently, however, did I understand the extent of the fraud and far-reaching implications that it presents throughout the entire world banking system. I began my research in preparation for writing High Priest of Treason, the Federal Reserve, by talking to judges, bankers, and attorneys about the money and banking system. I was appalled to discover that most of those learned people did not know the truth about the money or the banking system. Further, I found out that all the schools of all levels do not teach banks create money out of thin air. I researched throughout this history, accounting and law books, and the high school and college level. The truth is not to be found there. No one I know ever knew that banks create money out of thin air, or they weren't talking about it if they did know. I did find the truth verified in an unlikely source, in a form that cannot be contradicted. The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's own publication, Modern Money Mechanics, and a companion comic book for young children titled The Story of Money. These stories have been used as an exhibit in lawsuits against banks and are no longer available. And I mean, you guys know what it is. I mean, when you really understand what banking is, that's exactly what the fuck it is. And I don't know why anybody's offended, because it really doesn't take much fucking looking into this shit to see what the fuck it really is. So everybody's obviously choosing to be ignorant, because this shit is not hard to find. So the truth of how money is created, from the mouth of the Federal Reserve. Money is an ordinary routine part of our lives. It exists and acceptance are taken for granted by each of us every day. A user of the money may on occasion sense that the money must come into being rather than either automatically as a result of an economic activity and labor, or as an outgrowth of government. So hang on, let me write this down. But just how this happens all too often remains a mystery, and our schools do not attempt to lift the veils of the darkness. The actual process of money creation takes place primarily in the bank. In the absence of legal reserve requirements, a bank can build up deposits by increasing loans and investments so long as they keep enough currency on hand to redeem whatever amounts the holders of the deposits want to convert into currency. This unique attribute of the banking business was discovered many centuries ago, emphasis added. It started with goldsmiths. As early bankers, they initially provided safekeeping services, making a profit from vault storage fees and for gold coins deposited within them. People would redeem their deposit receipts whenever they needed gold coins or to purchase something, and physically take the gold or coins to the seller. In turn, would deposit them for safekeeping, often with the same banker. Everyone soon found that it was a lot easier simply to use the deposit of their receipts directly as their means of payment. These receipts, which became known as notes, were acceptable as money since whoever held them could go to the banker and exchange them for the metallic money. Then bankers discovered that they could make loans merely by giving their promises to pay or banknotes to borrowers. In this way, banks began to create money. More notes would be issued than the gold and the coin on hand because only a portion of the notes outstanding would be presented for payment at any one time. Enough metallic money had to be kept on hand, of course, to redeem whatever volumes of notes were presented for payments. Transaction deposits are the modern counterpart of banknotes. It was a small step from printing notes to making book entries, crediting deposits of borrowers, which the borrowers in turn could spend by writing a check, thereby printing their own money. And even that, writing your own check is fucking printing money too. You should know that. That's why they used to come back to you in the mail after you wrote a check. They would cancel them and you would get the canceled check back in the mail because they still retain the face value. That's why you're not getting them anymore, because the banks are intercepting them and selling them on the fucking open markets. Same thing with the money orders that you make. They retain the face value, which means that you can cash them in. You guys should read more books. So, Modern Money Mechanics, a workbook on bank reserves and deposit expansions. Reading Modern Money Mechanics will absolutely astound you and finally fill in your brain cavity that it was purposely left empty by our federally funded public educational system. Whoever authorized this booklet to be written, published, and placed into distribution is owed a great debt of gratitude. And let me just tell you that these people only put that shit out there because they fucking have to. Because if they didn't have to, they wouldn't. Trust me. And so that's going to be a fact. So this booklet, read, understood, and acted upon by you, will return the system back to its constitutionally sound money, or if you dare to do your part, to free we, the people, from the present economic slavery. And so this is an individual game. Let me just tell you that. So you're not ever gonna, be able to just pull people out of there by just telling them what to do, because everybody wants to see you do it. So don't do what I did and waste your time trying to convince people about what the fuck's really going on. Just learn about it, act on it, and get yourself out of that fucking situation. And then you can pull somebody out of there. But so when you start to understand the way that the game works, you can place yourself in a good position to be able to catch one of them good passes. So it is a game of chess. Stop playing checkers with these clowns. That's what I got for you for now. Until we meet again.